Is a beautifully sunny Brands Hatch for round 3 and round 4 of the 2022 Porsche Club Championship. The cars qualified earlier on today. That qualification set the grid for what is the first of 2 races for them today. Mark McAleer that's chatting to you now, but I'm delighted to say joining me in the commentary box to guide you through the action from this one is Piers Pryor. Piers, nice to be at Brands, nice to have some sunshine and some heat, and what a fantastic grid of cars.
Oh, what a day, what a track, what a group of cars. It's going to be a great day, Mark. Great weekend, hopefully, because the sun's finally out. We've taken the coat off for the first time this year, and I bet all of these drivers in these wonderful Porsche cars are going to be looking forward to sending them round the Brands Grand Prix circuit, which is a treat in itself.
It is. There's not that many opportunities if you're a club racer to race on the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, but I've got to say the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli last few years have always managed to sneak in at least a couple of rounds onto the Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah, exactly. It's great that they managed to get on because, as I just mentioned, it's such a unique circuit, you know, very, very much old school. I think it's generally the noise restrictions around the back, which means that the Indy circuit gets used for most club racing. Only a few times a year do we get to try the full loop out, and it is a world-class circuit.
And for someone that's raced yourself on the Grand Prix circuit here, you know, the elevation change, 30 metres of elevation change throughout the course of the lap.
It's 30 metres, but also people forget it's 30 metres. It's still quite a short lap as well, so the ups and downs are very steep, and when we know Paddock Hill, it's like a 1 in 3 or something ridiculous on the steepest part. But you've also got the dip down to Pilgrim's Drop. Hawthorns starts out banked and then flattens out at the top. Then Westfield, drops away at the exit. Then you go down and up through that Dingle Dell.
Dingle Dell and the blind entry to Sheen curve.
And yeah, Sheen is amazing. I love Sheen. It's probably one of my favourite corners. But I remember the first couple of sessions at Brands GP going into Hawthorns. I mean, a bit different. It was in a BRDC British F3 car at the time, but I think we've got the green flag now, so the cars are just heading out on the circuit. But it's really, really full commitment circuit, and the margins are so fine. If you go off, you're going to hit something.
Absolutely, it doesn't take any prisoners. So we'll guide you through the grid then as the cars head off on their formation lap, trying to build some temperature into their Pirelli tyres as they make their way around the circuit. The way that they line up then is based on qualifying from earlier on. So it's Steve Wood who qualifies on pole position. He won at Donington Park in the second of the 2 races there, and Bill Caley sits alongside. Pete Morris is there on row number 2 with the man who had very poor luck at Donington Park, looking to bounce back, former champion Mark McAleer. On to row number 3, that's where we see James Caley, and he's got another former champion, Chris Dyer, for company. And on row number 4, it's Kevin Harrison, who we didn't see out at Donington Park, but he's here at Brands Hatch this weekend. He's got Andrew Muggeridge for company. Row 5 of the grid, that's where we see Jim Bryan and number 44, which is Andrew Porter. And Colin Tester, who should have been racing in Class 1 in his Cayman, but has had problems with that both at Donington and yesterday in testing, so he's switched to his championship-winning Class 2 car from last year. The number 1 car, Brands instructor, should go well. He lines up there on row number 6. Alongside him is Peter Evans. The 7th row of the grid is Paul Simpson and Andy Toon. Andy is another former champion. And it's Ross Morris, son of Pete Morris, multiple champion, who sits further up the grid, who's got Christian Walker for company on row number 8. The 9th row of the grid is where we see Paul Seagrave and Oliver Chatham, and it's Harry Rice and Angus Archer that line up there on row number 10. The 11th row of the grid, it's Sharez Khan alongside Julian Morris, no relationship to the other Morrises we've got on the grid. And then it's Vince Blacker and Darren Lebet who line up there on row number 12. The 13th row, which is the penultimate row of the grid, is Carl Hazelton and Brian Richardson. And Tom Atherton lines up at the tail end of the field. Well, we had 2 races at Donington Park, Pierce. 2 different winners in Class 1, 2 different winners in Class 2.
The field has got strength and depth, which is great to see from a comms and a spectator point of view, but also good for the championship as a whole and the drivers, because these cars are so close. We've seen in qualifying the times are not separated by a huge amount, and it's great to see such a full grid of Porsche Club Championship cars. Of course, with 27 on the grid, it's really good to see such a strong grid.
Yeah, we haven't got Harry Mailer out, who was the driver who scored both the win and the second at Donington Park, and therefore in terms of Class 1 was leading the championship coming into this weekend on 70 championship points, exactly the same number of points as Oliver Chatham has as a result of his win and second place in Class 2. So it's a shame that we haven't got Harry out, but it's still a very, very competitive grid. One car that was on the entry list but hasn't made it out, I'm afraid, is number 62, has had to withdraw, which is Neil Delaghi. He had issues in qualifying where the bonnet wasn't secured on the car and it flew up, it smashed the windscreen, damaged the roof, and I'm afraid he's out.
That is so unfortunate. You know, one of those things that the last thing you want to do is go around the circuit like Brands GP and then not see where you're going. But it's a real shame that he can't continue this weekend. I'm sure we'll see them back for the next round.
Of which the next round will be at Anglesey on the coastal circuit there on the 20th and 21st of May, before they then go to Walton Park, Silverstone, back to Brands, but on the Indy circuit in September, and they'll conclude their season at Snetterton on the 300 circuit in Norfolk in October. So the grid is beginning to line up. If you want some colours for the cars, the man on pole position, Steve Wood, his car is largely yellow in colour. Alongside him is Bill Caley, whose Porsche Cayman is green and gold. On the right-hand side of your screen, row 2 of the grid, it's Pete Morris in the largely red and black car with a white stripe down the centre, alongside Mark McAleer's car, which is largely black with some grey flashes to it, in the hands of the double former champion. And it's James Caley, green and gold, alongside the red and black car with the white stripe, Chris Dyer, that sits there on row number 3. So the last few rows of the grid are just coming into position now. And penultimate row is into position. The final row of the grid comes into position. 25 minutes are on the clock. The green flag is waved at the tail end of the field, and we're about to get round 3 of the 2023 Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli underway here at Brands Hatch. The red lights are on, and as the lights go out now, it's a great start from pole position from Steve Wood. Bill Caley in second place was slower away and has already been gobbled up by Mark McAleer, and Mark McAleer is now trying to go around the outside, is he, of Steve Wood as they head in towards turn 1, but it's the Donington Park winner from race 2, Steve Wood, that leads the way at the moment, and the slow starting Bill Caley is trying to thread the needle back up the inside as they head in towards Druids on the first lap.
Yeah, 2x2 through on Paddock Hill Bend, 3 wide going into Druids as they're racing further down the field. It's still 2x2 as we go down towards Graham Hill as a move up the inside for second place, nearly contact on the apex, but they've both managed to wake away through there. Yep,
so they then start to stretch their legs a little bit down the Cooper Straight. You can see already that Steve Wood in the lead of the race is starting to break away from the chasing pack as they all file their way through Surtees Corner, where on the Indy circuit you'd flick left and then right. They just keep turning left here and then head out onto the Grand Prix loop, and this is the daunting section of the circuit that you were talking to, where the speeds build through Pilgrim's Drop, down Hawthorne Hill and up into this daunting banked corner at Hawthorns.
Yeah, very, very fast run as we go side by side to Hawthorns, which is brave, as you can see there, a car dropping out and then around the outside, but this corner, right, you'll see by the middle of the race they'll be going right out to the grass just as that car did there, and it's daunting, but still overtaking further down the field, even on this back loop, which is ridiculously fast. It's very much a rewarding part of the circuit to get right. As we've seen a spinner, that is the number 17.
Andrew Mugridge, that is, who was 6th in Class 1 last year, full 360-degree rotation, and rather got away with that in reality. We're talking about Brands Hatch not taking many prisoners if you have an off. Well, he avoided the barriers there, has lost a few places, but he's still in the fight. Yeah,
a couple of the 9 lives gone there, I reckon. Mark, that was did well to keep out of the barriers, but we've got a fight still for the lead. Obviously the yellow Steve Wood car ends first, but having to defend for second place now, very close going into Paddock Hill.
So round through Paddock Hill Bend now go. We're looking back at the fights that are going on in Class 2 at the moment. The early leader in Class 2 over the start-finish line, I think at the moment, is going to be Colin Tester in 7th position, so the champion from Class 2 last year, the overall champion, leading the class. But what happened to that lead advantage that Steve Wood had built up on the first lap? Because all of a sudden now, Bill Caley is coming back at him, and Steve Wood closes the door a little bit, which means that Bill Caley has to go on the grass to avoid the contact. He spins at Graham Hill Bend.
Oh, that's a real shame. There was we've got a big accident. That was at Druids, I think. But yes, the outside, unfortunately, turn 1. So Graham Hill Bend just got forced 2 wheels on the grass, and as you know, if you're 2 wheels on the grass, then that's pretty much that's your one-way ticket to the edge of the circuit. So a real shame for our second place at the start of this lap, Bill Caley, because he would have been going for the lead and struck well down the order. We'll update you where he is in just a moment when we go through the next split.
Yeah, that car at Druids is up on the barriers, actually, so it's been quite a hefty shunt there. The marshals just dealing with the driver at the moment. The race still continues at the moment, but I think they'll have little choice but to go safety car, which is now confirmed on our timing screen. So the safety car is out. The BMW electric safety car that we have now here at Brands Hatch is going to gather up the pack, and I'm not surprised, Piers. It's a very unusual place to go off, which tends to suggest either there was a little bit of contact, I genuinely don't know because I didn't see, or there might have been a braking issue with that car.
Yeah, there's actually 2 cars off. We've got a car in the gravel at the exit of Paddock Hill as well, so there's 2 cars that need retrieving, but that car in the barrier at Druids, we hope that everyone's okay. The marshals are on the scene, of course, we speak about it a lot, but our wonderful marshal team will be making sure that everything's okay there. It looks like it's gone off quite a long way around the corner. So I assume there's probably been some contact there. We can't see exactly who or how it happened. We didn't see that on the telly. But yeah, definitely safety car conditions now. The safety car will pick them up very shortly. Keeping tyre temperature and brake temperature, everything won't be quite as difficult as it was at Donington Park a few weeks ago.
No, it's nice that we've had the sunshine for the last few weeks in and out, but what we have always had is that cold chill, haven't we? And that thankfully has disappeared. Into the pit lane we get somebody making their way. That looked like it was Vince Blacker that was heading in towards the pit lane, so he has clearly got some sort of issue. We've got the car at Paddock Hill Bend that Piers was talking about to sort out, and the car that's in the barriers at Druids. I'm delighted to say the driver is out and is okay. So there you can see from our camera that the car has made quite hefty contact with the barriers. So you've got all of the rector cell, which has done its job of dissipating that energy from the car. You can see that all the tyres are above the barrier as well, as it's pushed over there as the kinetic energy dissipates. But as ever, circuit furniture doing its job and trying to cushion the impact of the car into the solid areas of the barriers.
Very much so. It looks dramatic with the tyres and barriers everywhere, but ultimately the longer and the further your car goes when you actually hit something, the less of an impact it has on the car and the driver. So looks dramatic, but it's actually done its job. Of course, there was a small amount of gravel there as well, which will have arrested the speed somewhat before it ended up in the barrier. Hopefully that car isn't too badly damaged. We haven't had a chance to see a different angle yet, so we'll see. But the main thing is the driver, as far as we're aware, is out of the car and is doing okay, because that is the main thing. Of course, we can fix cars, we can mend them, we can buy new parts, but the drivers are of course the important thing. Yeah, the two cars, we know of Vince Blacker's whereabouts because he came into the pit lane, and the other two cars that have not come through were Colin Tester, who was leading Class 2, of course, we mentioned, at the wheel of the number 1 car, and the 44 car of Donington Park Class 2 winner, which is Andrew Porter. So arguably we've lost two cars that were running right at the sharp end of Class 2. Yeah, there's a yellow car in the gravel at Paddock Hill, so we could probably, by process of elimination, work out who stopped where on circuit in a moment. But yeah, they're dragging that car out of Paddock Hill while simultaneously sorting out the damage to the car and the barriers at Druids as well. So it'll be a couple of laps on the safety car, if not potential of a red flag, but hopefully we can get it all sorted fairly shortly and get racing once again underway. Yeah, it's worth mentioning as well in terms of... Red flag, Mark. Oh, right, we have just gone red flag. It doesn't surprise me because that car looks to have ridden over some of the circuit furniture and it's not on the ground. The front wheels of it look to be slightly elevated, and if that has caused any damage to the circuit furniture, that needs sorting out and checking. And it also looks as though there's a bit of smoke coming from that area as well, potentially. It's gone in backwards, actually. I'm looking out the Pom's window. I can't quite tell. The thing is with these Caymans, they're such a similar shape front and rear, I can't tell how it's gone in. But yeah, we'll get that sorted very shortly. Of course, red flag means that we'll go probably back a lap. In terms of I would imagine the running order on the previous lap, which they were behind safety cars, will ultimately probably be the order that they were when the safety car first came out. Course, yes, and there were 19 minutes and 8 seconds remaining on the clock when the red flag came out. But some of that depends how long it takes to clear this incident up, and if it takes 5 or 10 minutes, then it might be that the restart isn't 19 minutes, it might be 15 minutes or 12 minutes or something. That's for the race officials to sort out. It's worth mentioning, though, all of the cars are running control Pirelli tyres. We see them limited to the amount of sets that they can use as well. So any car that runs in Class 1 is limited to a maximum of 1 new set of tyres for every race meeting. So in other words, they get a brand new set. Oh, it's Colin Tester, Brands Hatch instructor, that's gone off. And well, Colin has had a rotten season. He was the champion last year, won Class 2, won the overall championship, moved up to Class 1 this year at the wheel of the Cayman, had big issues with it at Donington and didn't start either race. Was testing it yesterday and had big issues with that car yesterday, so he made the decision overnight, okay, let's forget about the Class 1 car now, we're having issues with it, let's go back to what we know. And the championship winning car from last year, he made that decision to race in Class 2, and he's had the off. Testing at a circuit he knows well. Yeah. That'll be really disappointing. The fact that he's had all the issues and then gone back to his known machinery, and then unfortunately now, of course, undertaken some damage with that incident is a real shame, but it will be an advantage for him, having known the circuit so well, being, as you mentioned, an instructor around here. But when you only manage a couple of laps, it doesn't help. It's just one of those things. But you go racing, and it's so unpredictable. You never know what can happen. It looks like that car at the Paddock Hill is almost retrieved, so that's one of the two. We've got the car, obviously, we've just seen on the camera out of the barrier at Druid, so we're working towards getting it racing again. It'll probably be a few more minutes, but no, it's Yeah, not an ideal start to the racing weekend, but the rest of the racing was pretty good. We saw some racing up and down the field, didn't we, Mark, around the track?
At Donington Park, we saw some brilliant racing. It was absolutely fantastic, particularly some of the battles for the lead of the race overall as well. So yeah, looking forward to hopefully a good restart of this race, and a good race later on today for the second race from the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli, and of course the Boxster Cup that's here this weekend, and all of those will be streamed live as well. Back to tyres. Yeah, if you're in Class 1, you're limited to one brand new set of tyres for every race meeting. So in other words, a Class 1 car, brand new set of tyres they can use in qualifying and the 2 races that they have. If you run in Class 2, you're limited to one new set of tyres for every second race meeting. So in other words, the Class 2 cars will be on exactly the same Pirelli tyres as they were on at Donington Park, provided they competed there, and then when they go to Anglesey, then they'll get a whole new set.
Yeah, well, most of the Class 1 cars will probably have taken a new set again this weekend.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not mandatory.
You don't have to.
You don't have to if you want to keep the cost down, and that's partly why that tyre rule is in place, so that so that it's a fair race and everyone's on similar tyres in your own class, but also so that it stops people. Because I'm sure some people would be competitive and want to buy a new set of tyres almost every time go out. Yep. If you could, why wouldn't you? But that means that the racing maintains close racing, and also means that no one can sort of run away just because of budget. Because as much as this is not the most expensive race series in the world, tyres are unfortunately still fairly expensive to buy, and if you're using loads of sets, then that will obviously soon add up. A
lot of championships do limit the amount of tyres that you can do, and it's worth mentioning again that the cars we see out in this race, Class 1 and Class 2 cars, run on the Pirelli Slick tyre. If you want to join us for the Boxster Cup races later on, they run on the Pirelli P0 Trofeo R tyre, so that's a treaded tyre that they will run on, and they have even more restrictions, so they are limited to just 2 sets for the whole season. So again, it's all done to try and keep the costs down. So the recovery of the cars, we can see up at Druids the frontal damage that's been caused to the number 1 car, but you can also see to the right hand side of your screen, Piers, circuit furniture needs dealing with. We need barriers in an upright position. If they're not, it could potentially cause a launching issue if another car went off at exactly the same point. So there's work to be done there by not just the marshals but the circuit maintenance team. Yeah,
there's a lot of course we've got a big team of marshals who are very well trained. Well, we speak about it a lot, but they're doing the utmost to make sure that everything is back exactly as it should, because that is how it's designed to be used, and means that when we go racing again, it's safe for not only this race but also the races for the rest of the day and the weekend, of course. Yeah, it's good to see them working hard on that, and they will get it back to full working order as soon as possible.
Yeah, they certainly will. And as an ambassador for the British Motorsport Marshals Club, if you want to become a marshal, it doesn't matter whether it's for a Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli race, it doesn't matter whether it's here at Brands, any race circuit, any championship, we'd be delighted to have you. And the best thing that you can do, if you want to see that it's for you and you don't quite understand it, sign up to a taster day, which is marshals.co.uk, marshals.co.uk. That's the official website for the British Motorsport Marshals Club, and you can sign up to what's called a taster day. So you pick a venue that's near to you and a date that's convenient for you. There's loads of dates available at all of the circuits across the country throughout the course of 2023. You sign up to it and you get sent through an e-ticket. You won't be the only one doing it that day. There'll be a group of you, and then you meet your experienced marshal who will guide you around all the different areas where you can work. So you get to see what goes on at a marshal's post, what goes on in timing. Sometimes they come into the commentary box. You get to understand race control, assembly area, parc ferme, scrutineering, all the different areas where you can work. You do that in the morning, beautiful guided tour, and then in the afternoon you head out onto a marshal's post to experience what it's like to be at a marshal's post with an experienced team around you that show you what you need to do if something happens. Marshals.co.uk, sign up to a taster day. What have you got to lose?
Get on it. Sounds like a great day out to me. It looks like potentially on the timing, it looks like with some of the red flag conditions on the live timing, there's a checkered flag, not confirmed yet, because we haven't seen a checkered flag at the start finish yet. So we'll keep you updated on that. The car at Paddock Hill is now retrieved. The main work is still going on at Druids, as we mentioned.
Sometimes what you see is when it's got red flag on the screen and it goes to checkered flag, that's because our timekeepers are resetting that race, because they know that race is because of the red flag. You have to restart the system again, and it may well be that in a few moments' time what comes up on the timing screen is the checkered flag disappears and up comes 15 minutes or something like that, ready for the restart of whatever the second part of this race will be. We don't get aggregate race results like we used to get many years ago, where you add part 1 to part 2 and you work out the winner. The good thing now is it's if there's a red flag, the next race starts and you forget the first one ever happened, so whoever crosses the checkered flag first is the winner.
Definitely a better system in my opinion.
Much better.
Otherwise, especially in our position, Mark, when we're trying to figure out who's won, oh, they were 4.3 seconds ahead and now they're only 4.2.
Oh, it used to be so complicated, Piers.
Well, I'm glad I've joined this sort of thing before or after the change, so because it makes, I suppose, our lives a lot easier. But yeah, well, of course, we'll keep you updated as soon as we hear anything up in here in the comms box. You can see the cars obviously sitting on the start-finish line, waiting to get any instruction from the officials or the marshals. All with doors open, showing that it is definitely warm in those cars sitting in the sun.
It certainly will be when you've got and again, it's not as bad for you because you were a single-seater driver, but when you're in a race car with windscreens and you don't want to really lower the windows down because potentially that might create extra drag as well if you're that efficient and competitive. So you leave the windows up, which means that you're in a very warm race suit, 3-layer race suit, let's say, with Nomex underwear on as well, and a balaclava, and a crash helmet, and gloves, and boots, and you're in the sunshine with all of that pouring through the windows and the heat soak from the engine as well. Yeah,
you also, people forget that the clothing that you wear as a racing driver is designed to be insulating because, of course, if in the worst case happens, the reason we wear fireproof and heatproof stuff is so that you don't get burned. But it works the opposite way as well. It keeps you warm when it is warm, and then you also remove all the insulation from the inside of the car, so you've got no padding, no thermal insulation. You've then got the sun beating down, everything's black. It's and the only part of skin that is showing is the part around your eyes.
You do end up ridiculously warm. And even in these Porsches are rear-engined, you'll still get heat soak through the firewall back into the cockpit area, and also through the transmission tunnel. It's amazing how warm that transmission tunnel gets, which is still inside the car and right beside your legs.
Yes, it's there's a lot of heat going on inside a race car. Of course, you're burning fuel, which is warm, and then all the frictional heat as well, and then again no insulation. Then on top of that, you're going fast, and then there's not a huge amount of breeze, and you mentioned, Mark, they won't be turning the aircon on because there's probably the aircon's probably been removed.
Absolutely.
And you won't be opening the window because obviously that's extra drag. So in the spirit of competition, everyone is staying hot.
Well, I've done a couple of long distance races, including 24-hour races, and you hop in there with an ice cold drink that's connected to you with a tube, so you can have a drink tube connected. And after half an hour of flat out racing, it's like drinking warm tea. That's how warm it gets. It had ice in it half an hour earlier, and then it just becomes like warm tea whilst you're drinking it. So the heat radiation and the calorie burn, because you look at some drivers wear heart monitors, and you look at what your heart is doing as it's burning those calories as you're racing, and it's absolutely astonishing what the calorie burn is, considering that you're sat on your bum driving a racing car and just moving your hands and your feet. Well, no, it's a lot more physical than that. So it looks as though the car that was in the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Band, Andrew Porter's car, who, as I say, did secure a race win in the first of the 2 races at Donington Park, but had less luck in race number 2, where I think he finished down something like 8th in class, has been recovered from where it came to rest. We are still in the process of sorting out Colin Tester's car, which is now on the back of the flatbed recovery at Druids and is now making its way into the paddock area. So the cars that were involved are clear, but what we've still now got to do is just make sure that those barriers that we saw that were not quite in a true vertical position are positioned back to being absolutely vertical. And once that is done, what we then need to do is rebuild that tyre wall, make sure that the tyres are back in position, make sure that they're all strapped together in bundles, and then once that is done, then we have to position what's called the rector cell barrier in front of that. And rector cell barrier is what is there in front of the tyres. You get the Armco barrier, then you get the tyres, which cushion the impact, and then in front of that, in some places, you get what's called rector cell barrier, and that is a foam barrier which has been created largely just for motorsport, but is energy absorbing. There you can see, right at the very bottom of the screen, you can see the crash barrier, the tyres, and then on the left you can see that black section that's all covered over. Inside that is foam, energy absorbing foam, specially developed to try and cushion these impacts, and the 3 of those, it's amazing the job that it does. So as ever, the circuit staff working away in conjunction with the marshals to make sure that we're ready to go. Our brave cameraman down there must have, one would have thought, at least taken a step backwards when that car was coming towards him, because it's not just the car you need to worry about, it's the gravel that it spreads everywhere that you would need to worry about, and the cameras that we're filming with are not the cheapest of things. So yeah, the cameraman is unreplaceable. The camera isn't, so the camera stays where it is, and the cameraman runs away if needs be. But that was thankfully, I think, just a little bit further round, so it may well be that our brave cameraman just stood his ground down there and tried to bring us the images. So we're nearly there by the look of things. There's no indication as yet as to what is happening with the restart in terms of time, but the one thing I can tell you is that the cars that were positioned over the start-finish line are now being brought down in towards grid positions again. So it does look as though we are going to get some sort of restart for this Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli, round 3 of the 2023 Championship in a very short while indeed. So Steve Wood is positioned there on pole position that I can see down below me. Here are the cars just heading up onto the grid now. So the yellow Autofarm car with the sun glinting off it beautifully is Steve Wood. He used to race in the British GT Championship, and of all things the Volkswagen Golf, which was a very unusual car to ever see in British GT. He's still got the Golf, as Steve. I was chatting to himself and Stuart Scott yesterday, who raced the car in period. But yeah, it's good to see Steve back. Autofarm, the Porsche specialists, supporting him. Alongside is Bill Caley, who was slow away last time. Row 2 of the grid is going to be James Caley, the second member of the Caley family. And that looks like Mark McAleer that's alongside. And then next after that is going to be 2 of the cars from Strasser. So it's going to be Pete Morris and Chris Dyer, I would have thought, on row 3, looking at the coloration of the car. Row 4 will be Kevin Harrison, and that's the silver car that fades to green at the tail end of it. And next after that is going to be, I think that's Jim Bryan next after that, possibly. And then after that it starts to get a little bit more difficult. I'm doing this with the naked eye, so it's not the easiest things to do. Peter Evans, I think, because that looks like almost the Comet livery that he's got on the car. And alongside him, that looks like it is white and black and orange, albeit the sun glinting off it makes it less easy to see. I think that's Andy Toon. Yeah, so that's row 1, 2, 3, 4. That's row 5. And then we get to row 6, and then it becomes ever more difficult, which is going to be, I'm going to say number 7, Christian Walker, I think, alongside Andy Mugridge, it looks like, potentially. But that's where it gets a bit difficult then, because with the sun glinting off the cars from my commentary position, it's not quite as easy to see who is who, I'm afraid. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see as they get around there. Right, barriers almost ready to go. We've still got the JCB up at Druids. There's still a couple of course vehicles there at the moment, but all of the cars, bar one, are positioned on the grid. There is a car that was scheduled to come onto the grid that's now being pushed backwards as though it's had an issue. And that's a car that looks as though it should have been restarting 3 rows from the back, that is now being pushed off the grid by 3 of our marshals. You can just see it up in the top right-hand corner of the screen there. Clearly somebody has failed on that car, and it's not going to be able to take up its position on the grid. What, row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10th row of the grid. So you can just see the gap there on the right-hand side of your screens where that car should have been positioned, and that is Shiraz Khan, I'm afraid, that's being pushed off the grid. So clearly some sort of issue. Looks as though it's under motive power, though. Looks as though he's able to reverse under his own power, but whether it's gone into some sort of limp mode and he's spotted that. Clearly able to engage at least a reverse gear. But exactly what the problem is with Shiraz Khan, I'm not sure. That's a car that I don't think we saw that one out at Donington Park, if memory serves me correctly. And a quick look towards the results from Donington Park. No, he was. Yeah, he finished 5th in the second of the 2 races there. Apologies. So Shiraz Khan makes his way in towards the pit lane, and then the car grinds to a halt again. So looks as though in need of a shove from the marshals again. So he's certainly got reverse gear. It looks as though it's forward gears that he might be struggling with, or the car's got some sort of intermittent electrical issue. Oh no, there we go. He's going forwards again. Can't quite tell what the marshal is doing with the indication in his hand from where I am. They might be struggling for radio signal. They're trying to encourage him to get out of the way. There we go. He's hooked up a gear. And there we go. He's off again now. So may well be, if they can establish what the problem is, or Alt Control Delete, reset the car in some way, shape or form, then Shiraz Khan may well be able to start from pit lane. In fact, he's trundling his way all the way down. And is he going to go back into the paddock area, or is he going to wait at pit lane exit? So he is waiting. You won't be able to see it from the camera angle that you've got, but no, he's waiting at pit lane exit. So not quite sure what the problem was there, but Shiraz Khan will be starting, but not from the 10th row of the grid. He will be starting from the pit lane. Now, the barriers at Druids still being worked on at the moment. There's Shiraz Khan at the end of the pit lane, so he might be allowed to join when the formation lap gets underway, and he'll just have to start off the back, which won't be too much of a problem because he was scheduled to be 3 rows off the back anyway. Or the officials may choose to hold him. He won't be able to join in on the formation lap, and we'll have to wait until all of the cars have gone over the start-finish line to then start from the pit lane. We'll have to wait and see on that one. And as for the rescheduled distance of this race, we're hearing from race control that it will be 10 minutes. So I did say they might chop some time off depending on how long this recovery and repair work takes. Well, it's taking a reasonable amount of time, but has to, because it has to be done properly. There's no rushing this job. It takes as long as it takes to make sure that the circuit is safe for everybody to race. Not just in this race, but all of the supporting races here at Brands Hatch. So rather than 19 minutes and 8 seconds, which were on the clock when the red flag came out, it's just going to be a 10-minute restart, I'm afraid. So that's frustrating for everybody, but unfortunately it's a very tight timetable with all of the racing that we need to get in here at Brands Hatch, and you have to be finished racing by 6:30 in the evening. And even this evening we are timetabled without any delays to be finished at 6:25. And 6:30 is all of the cars off the track at the end of their slowdown lap and back into the paddock area. So there's no real leeway, and the lunch break was only timetabled for 30 minutes, and our ever hard-working Brands Hatch marshals deserve at least a 30-minute lunch break. So if there are delays and incidents, the only thing you can do as a race organiser, as frustrating and disappointing as it is for everybody, is reduce the distances of the race. So JCB has now finished doing what it needs to do at Druids. The last 2 course vehicles will shortly be leaving the scene. The cars are all assembled on the grid, ready to go. You can see Kevin Harrison there on the 4th row of the grid with his door open, sort of waving the door just to try and get any sort of air movement that he can. Also got Mark McAleer, double former champion from 2017 and 2007, sitting on row number 2 of the grid with his door open. The man from Yorkshire. And hopefully, next couple of minutes, we'll be able to get this restart of the race underway. So final 2 course vehicles now leaving Druids. Gravel traps have all been sorted out where cars have gone off and removing the ruts that exist in them. And the final 2 course vehicles, they won't have far to go to get off the track, because they'll come down to Graham Hill Bend where they're heading now, and they'll turn right. There's a little gate there, back into the Grand Prix paddock. And that means that literally in 30 seconds time we'll probably have the formation lap underway, one would have thought. In fact, no, they haven't turned right where I thought they were going to. So I think the countdown is on though. And both course vehicles now off the track. They'll be radioing to race control to say that they're clear of the circuit, and once race control receive that confirmation that those vehicles are clear, then it means that we are ready to start the countdown and ready to get another green flag lap underway, because of course whilst it's a warm day and the drivers will certainly be more than toasty in their cars, the tyres and the brakes have lost all of that temperature that they had. So another formation lap just to build the temperatures into everything again, get the car engines warmed up again, put everything back through another heat cycle, and then we'll get this 10-minute race underway. So off they go on a second formation lap, being led around by Steve Wood, who certainly got off the line well, didn't he, when the lights went out for the first time, whereas the car that's lining up alongside him, Bill Caley, was a little bit more sluggish away. And it's always interesting to see these battles that we get between the Porsche 996s, the Porsche Caymans and the Porsche 997, all of which are eligible to compete in Class 1. And the reason they compete and are very much on a level playing field is that all of the cars are balanced in terms of power to weight ratio. So the 997 is a heavier car, but it also puts out more power. The Cayman is a lighter car, has less power, but in terms of the way they equalise the performance of all the cars, they do a really, really good job, the technical team behind the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli, so as to make sure that no matter what your choice is, it's going to be competitive in Class 1 or Class 2. Now, the cars might use their tyres differently because, of course, power to weight ratio gets equalised, but a heavier car is always going to maybe use that Pirelli tyre that little bit more. So you might see maybe the 997s drop off a little bit towards the tail end of the race, but the Caymans seem to cling on a little bit more because it's a lighter car and it hasn't quite worked the Pirelli slick tyre to the same degree. And that always makes it really, really interesting. So, see them weaving around. Build tyre temp, build brake temp as well. And through shot goes number 88, which is Tom Atherton, who is off the back of the grid for this one. Was a little bit off the pace compared to everybody else in terms of qualifying, but the difficult thing is Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, as we mentioned when Piers Pryor was joining me in the commentary box, that there aren't that many opportunities to race on the Grand Prix circuit, and if you are one of those drivers that maybe hasn't raced on it for a few years, or it's your first time racing on it, it's not a difficult circuit to learn, but crumbs is it a difficult circuit to try and master, with the twists, the turns, the undulations, and the risk factor as well, because it is a tight circuit, it is confined, it's a narrow circuit with not a great deal of runoff, so the consequence of making a mistake is significant. And because it is a very technical circuit with blind entries to some corners and off-camber exits to others, it's actually quite easy to make a mistake. And the weather forecast for today is dry, but tomorrow looks a little bit iffy. So for any cars that are racing here tomorrow, the Porsches aren't, by the way, they've got their 2 races today, they're done and dusted today. But for any cars that are racing here tomorrow, out the back, under the trees, and then if it's damp, it could be very, very, very tricky and very daunting indeed for less experienced drivers. So Steve Wood ready to line up on pole position, hoping to get another good launch this time through. Bill Caley lines up alongside. I thought he might angle the car maybe slightly downhill, but he hasn't. He's lined it up absolutely square to the starting markers. Row 4 comes into position. You get row 5 coming up to a halt now. 6 comes into position. We're down into the Class 2 runners now. Row 7, what have we got? I think we've got 12 rows to get in. Row 8, 9 is almost there. And we've got that car missing, of course, where we've got Shiraz Khan absent from the grid but ready to go in the pit lane, and he was not allowed out onto the formation lap, so he's not latched himself onto the back. He'll have to wait until all the pack passes before he can get things underway. So let's have another go at getting round 3 of the 2023 Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli underway here at Brands Hatch. Good start from the pole sitter last time through, Steve Wood in the yellow car, and as the revs begin to rise and the lights will go out any second now, it's a good start this time from Bill Caley from the outside of the front row of the grid. Another brilliant start from Mark McAleer, and Steve Wood was slow away from pole position and is down into 3rd place as they head towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. He's in danger maybe of dropping to 4th because it looks as though Chris Dyer in the Cayman, the former champion, also got a really good start that time through. I think another poor starter was Pete Morris, who seems to have been gobbled up by everybody behind. The number 2 car is way down through the order, having qualified 3rd. He's going to be down towards, I would imagine, the bottom of the top 8 after a really poor restart from Pete. But it's Bill Caley that's got the jump, and he's bringing with him double former champion, which is Mark McAleer, as they stretch their way up towards Surtees for the first time through the left-hander and start to build those speeds again as they head through Pilgrim's Drop and then tumble down Hawthorne Hill and in towards the daunting right-hander at Hawthorne. So here they come up towards Hawthorne Corner. It's the Cayman that leads the way, the 997 in 2nd place, the 996 in 3rd. I did mention that they were all equalised. Well, there you go, 3 different models altogether. And in the pit lane, I'm afraid, with a broken rear toe link by the look of things, is Darren Lebet, number 52. Now, Where is he? Say he's in the pit lane. No, he's not. There must have been contact off the start, and that car was parked just off to the right-hand side beyond the starting gantry, just about out of harm's way. So it might be covered with localised yellows, but no more than that will be required. So 8.5 minutes to go of this restarted round 3 of the championship. And as the cars then start to head round through clearways and on towards Clark Curve, Bill Caley looking to try and get away at the wheel of the green and gold number 80 Porsche Cayman in the lead of the race. Good fight going on further back as well as they head over the start-finish line. That looks as though it's Jim Bryan maybe that's busy squabbling away, trying to keep cars behind him. Andrew Muggeridge, Andy Toon, Pete Morris, all in that little squabble. Pete Morris trying to get the overlap if he could on Andy Toon, the two former champions going at it as they head up towards Druids, and Pete Morris, by the look of things, has gone through the white and the green and the black car of former champion Andy Toon behind him now. So downhill in towards the breaking of Graham Hill Bend. Leading 6 cars have broken away rather, haven't they? Best of the fights is for 7th at the moment. Andy Muggeridge is there in 7th place, but look to driver's left. Who's there? Not going to let him go through. It's going to be Jim Bryan. And as for the leader of Class 2 in the early stages, it's the number 88 car of number 88 car of Paul Simpson that leads Class 2 in the early stages. So through Hawthorne Bend, there's James Caley, second member of the Caley family. Cars identically liveried. He's got Kevin Harrison in the oxygen-supported car sitting directly behind him. Kevin Harrison is another long time Porsche racer, so he didn't appear at Donington Park for the opening couple of rounds of the championship, but is here and working hard in round 3 of the championship as they head through the blind entry right-hander at Sheen Curve. Such a quick corner, that one. Hook up the curb, take as much of the apex and a bit more if you think you can get away with it. The one thing you don't want to do at Sheen Curve is turn in too late and then run wide on the exit, because that gravel trap is very inviting if you do that. Some good battles going on in Class 2 further down through the order as well. 6.5 minutes to go. So over the start finish line have gone the race leaders. Here is Julian Morris fighting away with the car that sits behind him. And as they come over the start finish line, Julian Morris looks as though he's just stretching his legs a little bit there, and he's beginning to put a little bit more daylight between himself and the car that was trying to hunt him down. That will be Harry Rice. So down through Paddock Hill Bend they will go. Julian Morris running 6th in Class 2 at the moment, and Harry Rice running 7th in the class. Both Class 2 cars sleeves up, slugging it out. No matter where you look, there are good fights going on actually in this one. It's the same at Donington Park. Pete Morris is still curiously off the pace a little bit in this one. So he was in 7th place still at the end of that lap, so he's still got a bit of work to do. Mark McAleer in 3rd place to set the fastest lap of the race that we've seen so far. 1 minute 38.976 from him. Pole time was 1 minute 37.3, but of course that was just the first flying lap on the restart of this race, so they're still trying to get everything back up to temperature. So pack swinging their way through Dingle Dell, starting to work their way back uphill in towards Sheen Curve once more. And all of the time, that fight between Julian Morris and Harry Rice not really separated by a great deal once more for 6th and 7th in Class 2. Just ahead of them you've got Angus Archer, who's busy fighting away. He's got Oliver Chatham right behind him, and Oliver is the man who leads the Class 2 championship at the moment. Excuse me, but he's only down in 5th position in Class 2 currently. So 4.5 minutes to go, 3 laps completed. Bill Caley set the fastest lap of the race that time through. So a 1 minute 38.783 from Bill Caley, which means that the lead advantage stretches to 1.3 seconds now, 1st to 2nd place. Steve Wood in 2nd place in the yellow car under big old pressure from Mark McAleer that sits behind. And it also looks as though Andrew Muggeridge was keen to try and squeeze his way through and gain a place. So there is, heading towards us, that is James Caley, the number 11 car running in 5th place. Looks in his mirrors, who's there? Kevin Harrison. who is not going away at the wheel of the 996 at the moment. The brake lights come on almost identically, flicking their way in towards Westfield at the end of the Derek Minter Straight. From there, the circuit plunges downhill towards Dingledale and then starts to climb back uphill again in towards the right-hander at Druids, right-hander at Sheen Curve, I should say. And then onto the brakes and in towards the left-hander at Stirling. Kevin Harrison, if anything, I would say, has fallen a little bit further away from James Caley over the course of that particular lap. Now, the gap between the pair of them was 0.7 of a second, and with 3 and a bit minutes to go, they'll be heading on to their, probably not quite their penultimate lap this time through. Nip and tuck as to whether they'll get this one and one more, or this one and 2 more, actually. Depends on how quickly they go. This time it's Steve Wood in second place that sets the fastest lap of the race and closes up on the race leader. So 1 minute 37.788. Lead advantage is down to just 0.7 of a second, and the top 3 you can see it equidistantly spread as they head down in towards the braking area for Graham Hill Bend. Chris Dyer still there in 4th in the red and black car. James Caley sitting behind. There's the lead trio just heading up towards Stirling's now through the left-hander. There goes Chris Dyer, James Caley, and yeah, Kevin Harrison has certainly fallen away, hasn't he? He fell away to the tune of half a second that time through in 6th place, the number 16 car. So Kevin just finding the car, isn't quite doing what he wants to do, but the lead 3 getting ever closer, and Steve Wood is on a charge here. All of a sudden, he is right on the coattails of the Bill Caley driven Porsche Cayman that leads the way down the Derek Minter Straight and up towards Westfield Corner. And certainly looks as though the 996 is pushing the Cayman hard here. Try to wring the neck of the Auto Farm 996, seeing what he might be able to do. Remember, he won the second of the 2 races at Donington Park. And as they head up towards the completion of what will be lap number 5, I think there's just about more than a lap time going to be left on the clock when they come over the start-finish line this time through. So they'll be on to the penultimate lap, I would have thought this time. It is really going to be nip and tuck, though. They're lapping about 1 minute 38, 1 minute 37 as they come over the start-finish line. There's about 1 minute 40 left on the clock, and that was a 1 minute 39 second lap, so it is that close as to whether checkered flag will come out at the end of this lap or the next. It depends how quick they are on this lap as to whether they've got one more to do. Now, for Bill Caley, what you want to do is do one less lap. The problem is he hasn't got enough of a gap behind him to ease off and try and hang on to the lead, so he's going to have to drive this lap flat out to try and hang on to the lead of the race as they flick their way for the penultimate time with a question mark. Through Graham Hill Bend and along the Cooper Straight, and then from there it's up towards the braking area for Surtees Corner. Further down through the order, that's Jim Bryan still busy fighting away. He's got the number 17 car of Andrew Muggeridge giving him a thing or two to think about, and Andrew Muggeridge dives up the inside heading in towards Graham Hill Bend. Can he get the car stopped for the corner? Does he come out in the lead of the car he's just overtaken? Yes, he does. Delays his exit though, which allows Jim Bryan maybe to close in a little bit more as they head up towards Surtees. Final 40 seconds of the race. Leading Class 2 still at this stage is the number 88 car that we mentioned a while ago in the hands of Paul Simpson, who was runner-up in Class 2 last year. But Andrew Muggeridge, Jim Bryan and then Andy Toon all together fighting over what is going to be 7th, 8th and 9th position. All Class 1 cars. Class 2 leader is down in 11th place at the moment. But for our overall race leading trio, they'll be heading up towards what might be the final corner, and Steve Wood is looking for the lead of the race as well by the look of things as they head out of the final corner. Are we going to see the checkered flag this time through? We do, and on the run to the line, Steve Wood is going to pick up the win actually. On the run to the line, the checkered flag did come out. Steve Wood picked up the win, did he? Well, the timing screen is suggesting that he lost out by 25 thousandths of a second, but to the naked eye, I thought he'd just got his nose ahead. They'll look into the data and adjust it if needs be, but at the moment it's showing the win goes to Bill Caley by 25 thousandths of a second from Steve Wood. Steve Wood thinks he's got it. I think he's got it as well, but what happens is when you get 2 cars crossing the line so close to each other, the timekeepers will look back at the data, and they do also have photo finishes available and try and understand as to exactly which car finished ahead of the other. Now, the top 3 were covered by 0.3 of a second. It was that close at the moment, and it's still showing Bill Caley as being the winner at this stage. But I'm still hanging on for confirmation of that, and it may well be that that confirmation comes after we finish this stream as well, so we might need to pick up and clarify that maybe before the run into the second race. But either way, oh, here we go, it has now changed. According to the timing, Steve Wood did claim the win, and by, wow, the blink of an eye, 1/1000th of a second. That is 0.001 of a second that he claimed the win from Bill Caley. You couldn't get any closer than that unless it was a dead heat, because we only time to the nearest 1,000th of a second. But what a run out of the final corner that was for Steve Wood. He thought he'd got it because he was banging the roof of the car. To my eyes, it looked as though he just got his nose ahead. And confirmation of the results is that Steve Wood does win his second race of the weekend, and it couldn't be any closer, could it? Bill Caley finishing a whisker away in second place, with Mark McAleer not far away either in third. Chris Dyer was fourth, head of James Caley was there in fifth, and it was Kevin Harrison in sixth. Head of Pete Morris, who was curiously off the pace in 7th place. Andrew Mugridge was there in 8th place. He had a good race with Jim Bryan, who was 9th, and Andy Toon completed the top 10. Just outside of the top 10, the Class 2 winner finished in 11th place, which was the number 88 car of Paul Simpson. 12th place went the way of 45, which was Paul Seagrave, and then after that it was Christian Walker, who was 13th, head of Ross Morris 14th. 15th place was the number 22 car, Peter Evans. Oliver Chatham was 16th, Angus Archer was there in 17th, and Julian Morris completes the top 18 ahead of Harry Rice, and then the car of Carl Hazelton, who was there in 20th position. Shiraz Khan finished in 21st position. 22nd went the way of Brian Richardson. 28th was number 89, which was Tom Atherton. And Darren Lebet, we know, had problems and his car retired early on in the race. So that's the first of 2 races today from the Porsche Club Championship with Pirelli here at Brands Hatch. Thanks for joining us for race 1, but please make sure you join us for race 2 later on today. Until then, it's goodbye.